Welcome to Jive Talking. We're coming to you live from Jolly Roger Sailing Club, where pirates come to play. And today, we have a very special show. Any of you who sail need to someday purchase sails. And we're going to talk to the guy that you probably should go to visit. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Brian Goldberg. I'm the owner of Greiner Sailmakers here in Toledo, Ohio, on Edgewater Drive.
How long have you owned it?
About 3.5 years now. My grandfather started it back in I believe the 60s, and then about 2000 he got out of sailmaking for a while, and then come 2016 he started back up at our current location, and I started working with him, and shortly thereafter I decided to buy the company from him, kind of to take it in my own direction and also to help him finally retire.
For those who may not know, why don't you tell them who your grandfather is? Because I got to tell you, in the community here, and I don't use this word lightly, he is kind of a legend.
My grandfather is John Greiner. He's been sailing all his life. He was Commodore of Jolly Rogers here in, I believe, 1958, when he was, I believe, 21 or so. And then he's since been the Commodore of the Toledo Ice Yacht Club, North Cape Yacht Club, and AYC.
So he's been pretty active in the boating community for a long time, it sounds like.
Sure has been.
So what kind of boat, tell us a little bit about your sailing experience. Like, what kind of boat do you own?
I don't own any boats.
Okay, but you sail with people.
I like to sail with other people. I'm busy enough that I don't need to take on the ownership of a boat. We have a family boat. It's 24 carat. It's a Lindenberg 24, which was the precursor to the Wavelength 24. I grew up racing in the junior program at North Cape Yacht Club. Started in 1995 at Sail Camp with the Opties, moved up to FJs, 420s, Thistles, and the whole time I've been racing perf and various one-design fleets.
Tell everybody what perf means, because not everybody. We actually had a couple of people from Belgium actually log in, so they might not know what perf is.
Performance handicap racing fleet, I believe. Sorry, and it's just a way of assigning ratings to boats for handicapping purposes, to race different types of boats against each other on the same course, and kind of accounts for how they're built and their various speeds.
Now, as far as sales go, how often, I mean, at owning a company, you probably say every year, but how often do you say that people should really replace their sails?
Well, it depends totally on how each person uses their boat and their sails. If somebody is racing, like Phil over here, he's going to have, more performance type sails, and they're later in your questions you're going to be asking about the pros and cons of different sailcloths.
Well, go ahead and talk about that now.
There's better responsiveness in certain sailcloths. There is also varying levels of sailcloth. There's laminates, there's wovens, there's you can go from the tip top with carbon fiber in the sails to aramid fibers in the sails down to polyester, and so they all have their different price points and different weights, different uses. And so somebody like Phil, though, is going to have a laminate.
I should stop for a second. I forgot to have Phil introduce himself. Phil, why don't you go ahead?
I'm Phil Fry. I'm the Commodore here at Jolly Roger Sailing Club, and also a customer of Greiner Sailmaking Lofts.
I got to say, I've been on his boat, and I've noticed it. They are from Greiner. Yes. And Phil and I tease Phil a lot, but Phil does quite well racing. He has quite a few Burgies that he has won. Last year, he won the deep water race for Bay Week in his class. What class was that?
Well, there was just one. There was a jam class, and a perf class, and I was able to be in front of John Greiner. I think that might have been actually 21.
2 years ago.
Yeah, that. And John was originally set to do perf, and then he's lining up to go in jam, and I'm looking at my crew, and I'm going, well, there goes our first place.
That was a wild ride over there.
Yeah, and so it ended up, because I had Greiner sails on my boat, that we did quite well. So.
Yeah, but let's face it, part of it's too knowing how to trim them. I mean, I could put Greiner sails on my boat, and I'd still be out there. Maybe, I don't know. So tell us about the different materials. Like, is it the more high-tech, the shorter they would last?
Yeah,
or?
so I have some samples here, so the listeners can't see these, but there's various
I'm interested, though.
levels of, those are all Dacron, and that's different weights of Dacron there. So different weights for different sizes of sails and or different sizes of boats. The thicker the cloth, this is 10-ounce cloth right there. That's going to be for a bigger boat and or a number 3, like 100% jib that you're using in heavier winds.
You mentioned number 3. Tell everybody what that is, because not everybody listening is going to. I don't really know what that is either.
Number 3 is just kind of a code word that we use in the racing circuit, as it's the smaller of the 3 main sails that you would use as a foresail, whether it's a Genoa, whether it's a 155%, which is an overlapping Genoa. That's going to be the largest Genoa you're going to use. Down to a number 2 would be anywhere from a 120 to a 140%, and then a number 3 would be anywhere from a 90 to 110.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but if your head sail comes back to the mast, that's 100, right?
Roughly, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you're saying a 150, then you're talking it's going to be almost 50% farther past. I mean, tell us
to
how
an
that
extent.
is.
So the percentages refer to the LP dimension, which is a line that's drawn perpendicular to the luff all the way to the clew. It's the shortest distance from the clew to the luff of the sail.
We're back in the Kringle thing again, aren't we here? I was on Phil's boat, and he told me to do something, and I didn't know what it was. And anyways, go ahead.
And so it's the LP dimension, which references a percentage of your J dimension. The J dimension is the distance from your forestay pin back to your mast. So it's very close to being able to look at.
But a bigger number means farther past the mast.
Correct.
I mean, I know if you're a person that's super into sailing, all those would make sense. Yeah, I mean those. So on these cloths, let's go back to this. Is a heavier cloth going to last longer, or is it just heavier because it's larger on a bigger boat?
It can last longer, but then if you build it too heavy, what kind of boat do you have?
I have a
Ted?
Catalina 27.
So if you have a Catalina 27 and we decide we want to build a sail out of 10 ounce, that's quite a bit overkill for that. You're not going to have the responsiveness in your sails. In lighter wind, your sail's going to sit there and it's going to be board flat, or it's not going to get the shape in it that you want. And alternatively, if we use a 4-ounce cloth, that's going to be underbuilt. It's going to stretch more, and you'll end up eating it up right away.
So it wouldn't last as long.
It wouldn't last as long. Correct. But having them, too heavy of a cloth and building up too much on it, and you flog the sails, that'll eat away at the lifespan of the sail as well.
So then, if somebody's going to buy sails from you, first of all, let's ask. I'm just going to ask right out here out front. Why would I want to buy a sail from you rather than order online?
Well, you can come right into the shop, talk to the people that are actually going to make your sails. Not only are we going to look at your old sails, lay them out on the floor with you. What do you like about the sails? What don't you like about the sails? What would you like to change? We can copy the sail to a T, whereas if you go online, you're not going to get that. And you're going to have significant shipping costs if you do end up sending it somewhere. Most of the places online that you can order a sail from, all that stuff is built in the Pacific Rim, Hong Kong, China, Sri Lanka, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with their manufacturing process, but sometimes you got to be sure where they're getting their cloth from. whether it's a name brand cloth or whether it's seconds, thirds, and they just got, the bulk rate discount on the cloth. So here we use nothing but, first quality cloth from the well-known sailcloth companies. You can come look at the sewing machine that we're going to build it on. When we're in the middle of building your sail, we'll tell you when we're doing it. You can come in, take a look at it, and if there's any problems after the fact, and you buy a sail online, who do you take the sail to?
See, you brought up the very thing that I don't like that's going on right now. Those of us that are a little older remember when you used to have an Ace Hardware everywhere. And if you had any problem or needed anything, you'd walk in there and you'd say, hey, I'm working on my sink and I need this, and somebody could work with you because they understood. And now you go in a store, they don't know. Whereas if you order a sail from you and there's a problem, I look at this way. When I used to sell stuff, I used to say that, are you buying on price or cost? Okay? Price you pay one time, cost you pay over and over and over again. So let's say something's wrong with your sail, and I'm going to use a personal thing. I ripped my head sail, and Bay Week was coming up, okay? And I've never bought a sail from you, and I came in there, and I said I had a tear in my sail, and Bay Week was this week. He said, okay, I'll make sure we get this done for you. You might have to, and you explained I might have to pick it up in the shed or whatever. But the point was, you're here, you're local, and you got right on it. That, to me, is worth, even if it costs more. I like to use a local vendor. That way, if I have a problem, because eventually, if we don't use them, they're gone. And the thing is, if we start ordering overseas, we start ordering somewhere else, and like you said, you have problems, you're number 522. They don't give a crap. I'm sorry, but if you call Brian up, or you go to see Brian and I got a problem, he's going to look you in the eye. And he's going to fix whatever it is that you need to have done. And like I said, I've been impressed with all the dealings, and mine have just been on repairs. By the way, you still have my jib somewhere in your shop. But anyways, so you're saying that replacing the sails really depends on the higher tech, the more often it's going to have to be done
Usually,
versus if you're just cruising around.
Usually, and the reason for that is if you're buying the higher tech sails, you're using them for racing, and so you're looking for performance out of the sails rather than longevity and durability. The racers tend to be more okay with, giving up some durability and longevity for better performance.
For speed, yeah, absolutely.
I have some customers that they're on a one sail a year program, no matter what, for the last 7 years. Same customer comes in, and I know I'm not going to sell them a whole set of sails, but every year
Can I
I'll be able.
hand me down? And call me up?
I know that they're going to be in, and they're going to do one sail a year, and it's just to keep their inventory, turned over and up to date. Because if you get going, and it's really easy to say, I think our sales are okay. We could probably skip this year, and then 2 or 3 years later, you do that a couple times, and then you're like, well, all of our sales need replaced, and that's a significant chunk out of the budget. So and that's why when you first sent me your questions, you asked, I bought a boat and I'm looking at buying sails. What should I do? My first reaction would be to you don't have to buy sails yet. Bring all your sails in that came with the boat. Let me look at them with you. And my job is to, help you prioritize based on the inventory that you have and knowing what you want to do with your boat and or program. How long do you plan on keeping the boat? Where are you taking it? How often are you racing it? What's your crew situation look like?
See, these are things they're not going to ask you online. Where do you race your boat? Where do you take your boat? How often do you sail your boat? How often do they keep in your boat? They want to know, can you write a check? Can you charge it? We're ready to go. And how big is it? That's only part of it. Like Brian said, why did you buy your sails from Greiner? Phil?
Well, the number one reason that I bought from Brian was I wanted to keep the money local, as you've talked about.
I believe in that.
But over the last few years, Brian and I have just built up a great relationship, and And this is the type of stuff that you're going to get from Brian. I take my sales in normally once a year, and Brian takes a look at them. And, someone who is just interested in making profit would say, oh, you need to replace this, you need to replace that, you need to do this. And I took my main sale in at the end of last season. Brian's looking at it and going, no, you got another season out of it. He just as easily could have said, oh, we need to build you a new one this winter, but he didn't.
That's what I like.
And he knows my boat. Actually, he sails by me in pre-start a lot of times and goes, great looking sails on that boat.
Do you yell you're over early like you did when I was racing, but was in a different class and you were embarrassed? But we won't talk about that.
That's a whole podcast. That's a whole different podcast. But I mean, I'm excited to work with Brian. He knows where I am financially, how much money I want to put in. I do not buy a new sail every year. And then he maintains my sales for me, and we talk about what my boat needs. He knows the guys I'm racing against. He knows I like to do well, and he knows how to get me at least in the ballpark, and then I have to do the rest. But I'll as long as he's got the shop, he's got my business. He just built this late this fall, early this winter, built a new cover for my boat. So obviously I'm planning on keeping my boat if I've just invested in a new cover for it. And I didn't go the very top of the line, and I didn't go the bottom of the line I'm in a little different situation. I got a roller furler, so I don't need the 1, 2, 3 that he was talking about with people who have either foils or hank on jibs. So we either roll in or roll out how much sail we need. But he knows that sail pretty darn well. He built it, and it's in there right now. I think we're doing a couple modifications on it this winter.
Already to pick up, actually.
No kidding.
Yep.
All right. See.
Well, what kind of cloth? He gets yours done.
Well, of course.
What kind of cloth?
Well,
what kind of cloth is yours made out of?
Well, Brian would have to tell you. I know.
So
it's pretty.
he's got a polyester laminate,
and it's an intermediate.
Yeah, that looks just like it.
Yeah, it's a little lighter weight there.
Yeah, it's an intermediate. It's not carbon fiber.
No, but it's a polyester laminate, and it's for club racing. That's all you necessarily need. I don't necessarily think that everybody has to have carbon sails. I don't know that it's worth the price point. For certain boats, there's Phil's sailing an older Columbia 8.7, and I don't know that it's worth the investment of the carbon fiber. I can only
get it going so fast,
How many years is these going to last on Phil's boat, you think?
So a lot of times it depends on how often you use the sails. How often do you roll it up and roll it back in? How many tacks do you do? There's some of the pros they count their tacks and say, oh, that jib's done, and it's time to buy another jib.
Glad my wife doesn't do that to me.
The cloth companies often will tell us, when I ask how long will this cloth last, they say 100 races is what it is. But in all reality, you got well over 100 races into that sail. Probably close to 100 races. It's been about 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
And between Wednesday nights and weekend races, you got about 100 races on it. 100 races, and the sail is in great shape. We just saw it the other day. I don't see why you can't get 6 or so years out of a racing sail. Some boats beat up sails a bit more than others. Some cloths are, if you put carbon fiber inside of, this plastic laminate on the microscopic level, the carbon is brittle and it will break and be sharp. And so the carbon tends to eat itself up a little bit quicker than the polyester laminate. So the polyester laminate will last longer. It's a little cheaper, but you're losing performance.
I hope what anybody that's listening to this is coming away with is this guy knows his business. And and this guy's going to find out what you need and is going to help you with that. I think that's important because, like I said, you order anything online, they'll give you what you want, but that may not be what you need. And then all of a sudden you're unhappy and it's your own fault because you didn't consult with a professional.
Well, and let me add that, when if Ted, you were to come into the shop and want new sales, I'd say, well, let me see what all your sales look like. Let's prioritize. We'd lay out your main sale, and I'd look at it and say, just like I said earlier, what do you like? What do you want to change? But before even we go to building, then we're going to want to look at your boat, come out and measure your boat. There's so many Catalina 27s out there, and so many of them have been modified over the years. What year is your boat? It's from the
78.
Okay, so you're 78. You're at 35 years old, or was that right? Yeah,
45.
45 years
45?
old.
We didn't say new math. It was just new sales.
I was told there'd be no math.
Phil's
This
terrible
is no
at math. He
test.
always answers 3 anytime you ask him a math question.
So 45 years. How many modifications have been made to that rig? Has anything broken and been custom done? You coming into the sailing community, not necessarily knowing the history of the boat.
Nothing.
So it's my job to go look at the boat and determine if I have to build the sails differently than a normal Catalina 27 based on what's happened on that one particular boat. And you're not going to get that overseas. So
Nope.
what I end up seeing is, people will order stuff from certain companies online, and it'll be a nice sale. When they get it, it's a beautiful sale. They bring it in because something doesn't work, and they say, I need you to fix it. Well, then they're going to be spending, another $300-400 for me
Might
to
as well
tear
have
it.
bought it from you.
Yeah, well, and sometimes we're, depending on the sales and who else you're buying it from, sometimes we're cheaper, sometimes we're more expensive. There's different reasons for all the pricing. So, but what really, I don't know, it hurts me when I have to cut into a brand new sail and tear it apart to fix it. But it also, makes me feel good that, hey, if they would have come here, they wouldn't have had to do this. And from that experience on, they will come here for it.
You talk about taking care of people. I saw your grandma. I was over at TYC, and I'm convinced that she would come and give you a whooping herself if you weren't taking care of your customers. She goes, "Is my grandson taking care of you guys?" I said, "Yes, your grandson's a very nice young man." It was funny just hearing her. But so if I'm looking, well, let me ask you this: what other services do you offer? You mentioned sales. Phil said he bought a cover from you. Do you do rigging?
We do sales, new, old, repairs. We do winter covers for sailboats.
Ooh, that's nice.
And that's usually a nice investment, but it's also, you're not going to be tied to a shrink wrapper then, and where the shrink wrap prices are subject to changing
Mine went
every
up almost
year.
double from last year, so I might be calling you.
Every year. The return on investment usually depends on the boat and the cover. The return on investment for the covers is usually 4 to 6 years. But if you're going to hold on to your boat for that long, you're going to be putting money in your pocket rather than shrink
agree
wrapping.
with that.
It also helps you if you're selling your boat, if you've got a custom winter cover
That's a good point.
for it.
Now, what does it cover? When you say cover, what does it cover? Your just companionway, or when you say cover, what does it cover?
We do mast up or mast down covers. Phil recently purchased a mast down cover where we build a wooden ridge pole for the length of the boat, and then the boat gets a Weathermax cover that goes down around. It's as tight as shrink wrap and goes all the way down to the waterline. So,
And it breathes.
and it's a breathable cloth, but it doesn't let water, sun in. And we've been using the same cloth for 8 years and haven't had to even think about replacing one yet. So, if you're in the market for a cover and you're planning on holding on to your boat, it's probably a good way of, it's a good investment and a good way to protect your assets, actually.
I think this year I paid almost $1,000 to have shrink wrap.
You've got to figure around here, your boat's under a cover for 7 months. So
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
Phil,
So I mean, we've got a 5-month season here. So it's it's a really good investment to make.
Well, and in addition to that, it's, we can do masked up covers where it's a 2-piece cover, and so along with that, we provide the service of installing, putting the covers on, and taking them off, inspecting them, storing them, and there's
You
a
talking
separate.
about annually? You can pay
Yep.
somebody to come. Ooh.
Yeah, so we service about 45 covers, and every year we build about 10 to 12 new covers. We wait till they come out of the water in September and start measuring, and if everything works out well, then the boats are covered by the time snow comes.
People do take their boats out in September.
Some people do.
Okay.
I shoot for October 15th.
Yeah.
We wait till after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, well, you're hardcore.
Well.
But in addition to the covers and the sails, we also do lifeline swedging. We make new lifelines, so we can do running rigging for your sheets and your halyards. We can splice. We prefer splicing new rope rather than old rope. Old rope, you can try to bring it in and see if we can do it, but we might tell you, nope, we got to buy new rope to do that. And then we also do standing rigging as far as stays go, and we do all that.
How long does standing rig? I mean, just give me an average last on a boat.
So it truly does depend on how hard you work your boat, and whether or not the biggest overriding concern is whether or not it was ever in salt water. If it was in salt water,
Yeah.
and at any point in its life you want to get it inspected, any rigging shop will inspect it and see a little bit of rust or corrosion, and they'll tell you to replace them because they got saltwater damage on them. It's boats can go 40 years with the same standing rigging. We just replaced some the boat was built in the early 80s, and it was out on the West Coast for about 3 years before it made its way this way.
Boy.
And but 40 years, and we replaced everything on the boat. It was a Panda 38, and we did it relatively affordably for the guy, and he it ended up being less than I expected it to be, and less than he expected it to be as well. And he was going to go cruising, do the big loop and everything, and so this was, an investment for peace of mind for him. But in the Great Lakes and freshwater, it's just something you want to inspect your rig and your stays on an annual basis or whenever you can. And what I always tell people is if you got to ask a question about it, like, hey, take a look at this. If you're asking that, it's time to replace it.
It's kind of like, do you think I should reef? You probably should have already reefed one of those things.
You're already late.
Yeah.
It's too late.
We probably should have rigged the reef line first.
Yeah.
I have to teach you how to do that,
You
don't I?
you do.
All right.
Yeah. What he's saying is I really don't understand how to reef my boat. And there was a race that we were in, one race, and I really should have had probably 2 reefs in the sail, and I had 0. And let's just say it was an interesting ride all the way home. But everything went okay, except I tore my head sail, and Brian was nice. He said it would have tore anyways. He made me feel good. Now, tell me about, you mentioned this, but I tell you, one of the things I know absolutely, well, not that I know a lot about sailing anyways, but I hear people talk about spinnakers, symmetrical, asymmetrical, then they talk about gennikers. Tell us a little bit about what the heck is all that mess.
So a spinnaker, for lack of any better terms, is just a big kite type sail that goes, it's very rounded when it's filled, and it's to catch the wind. Usually and historically they were always symmetrical, so the same on both sides, and you'd use a spinnaker pole to hold out the windward side of the spinnaker and catch the wind. More and more they've been going to asymmetric sails and spinnakers, and what it really does is you pin the tack on either a bowsprit or on the front of the boat and raise the halyard, and then you got a little less work to do on the bow. So you don't have to have somebody, jibing the pole and doing all that. They have their different values as far as, with a symmetrical spinnaker, you can go deeper and farther dead downwind, whereas with an asymmetric spinnaker, you have to ride a higher angle and then jibe a few more times. A Jenniker is kind of just a sales pitch of, it's a coined term that it's an asymmetrical sail is all it is. But to make people want to buy it, they called it a Jenniker. And
I want to buy one now. I didn't even know what it was. So, can any boat pretty much fly a spinnaker, or does that have to be a certain kind of boat?
Most of the time, any boat can fly a spinnaker. You want to make sure you have an extra halyard for a spinnaker. A lot of boats never came with them, if it was a cruising boat rather than a racing boat, or they've been taken off because somebody that owned the boat previously didn't want to use a spinnaker, and they just didn't want an extra halyard to goof everything up. So, if you have an extra halyard, we can rig you up a spinnaker. There's a few other, blocks that we'd want to add to your deck program, but otherwise, any boat pretty much can fly a spinnaker.
I got to tell you, the videos I've seen online about boats being pulled over flying those, I'm like, I think I'm good. How come you don't have one for your boat, Phil?
Well, I race in jib and main,
right.
So we're not allowed to fly a third sail anyhow. And then when I converted my boat from a hank-on jib to a roller furling, there was a block at the top of my mast for a spinnaker halyard that was interfering with the furler. So I totally took it off. Jib and main is the class. I love that class. That's the class I'm going to stay in. And to be honest with you, when we've got the slowest boat out there on the course, I tell my crew we're really winning when we're out there the longest, because a lot of guys finish the race, they're headed back in. We're out there enjoying the sunset, and so it,
Yeah.
So I like jib and main, so I'm not in a hurry to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So
I just wondered because I knew you didn't, and like I said, I've seen some of the videos, and I'm like, I don't think that's something I would want to get into.
For non-sailors out there listening to the podcast, those are normally the very colorful sails. Your jib and your main are going to be some shade of white or black, depending on how they're constructed. And the spinnaker is different for almost every single boat out there. They kind of have their own colorful look to them. They're kind of like parachutes a little bit, and you can almost tell a boat by the color of the spinnaker at a distance. You know which boat that is, and they normally have a very distinctive pattern to them as well. So.
And they're usually also made out of some sort of, for lack of a better term, nylon. It's a nylon thin material. I didn't bring any of that here.
That's okay.
I did have a Code Zero cloth here, and a Code Zero is kind of a hybrid spinnaker that's not really a spinnaker, but it's kind of a spinnaker. And
Plus, it sounds cool too. Code Zero.
It's primarily for tight reaching, and so that's a very different cloth. You could make a Jenniker out of that, or any nylon cloth as well.
So when you talked about, like, if I'm sailing downwind, you said you talked about going deeper and having a certain. Tell me what that means.
Well, you can sail directly with the wind with a symmetrical spinnaker, with the wind directly behind you. Whereas with an asymmetric, your sail is not going to kite out as much and catch the wind. It's hidden behind your mainsail, so you got to head up a little bit and get a better angle, and you're going to want to broad reach a little bit more rather than going dead downwind. And then you play your jibing angles, but heading up will also make you increase your speed as well. So you're going to sail more distance faster, and the goal is to make that sail that longer distance faster than a symmetrical boat would sail dead downwind a little slower.
Now, since you don't, so who would buy the one to go deeper? Somebody that wanted to, because let's face it, depending on the course is going to depend on if you're going more downwind or going on a broad reach, or like who would want to buy one to go?
So typically, the boats that would have an asymmetrical spinnaker are the ones that have bowsprits rigged on, that are designed with the bowsprits.
Okay.
Otherwise, and recently, more
That's the
boats.
thing that came over the corner of our boat that time when I was with you when that guy got too close.
Yeah.
I said, I think we're going to get hit. Oh, we're okay. Phil says, oh, boy. I can't say what he really said, but it was something like, oh, boy.
It was like, oh, boy.
Recently, more boats have been going to asymmetric sails and without bowsprits, just tacking them on the front of the boat. And what that does is it makes it a little easier for the crew work. They don't have to have somebody, screwing around with the spinnaker pole. And so shorthanded crews or people that, are just getting into it, or solo sailors. I've been talking to 2 or 3 solo sailors that are interested in converting over to having asymmetric spinnakers, just because they're easier and safer for them to do when they're racing alone by themselves.
Can you set somebody's boat up for solo sailing? Do you guys do that?
We could, and we could do that. There's other places that'll do that, and at the very minimal, at the least we would do is, walk the customer through what they want to do and lay out their options, show them what we think we would suggest. And that's, if you got a question about your boat and you don't know what something's there for, or something's not working right, we're here. Just give us a call, and we'll come take a look at your boat and walk through it with you. We're here for teaching just as much as selling sails and stuff. We want you to be using your boat properly and in a safe manner as well.
Well, thank you very much for coming out today. I learned a lot about sails. Do you have any more questions, Phil?
I do not.
Okay. Do we have another sponsor, or is it just Greiner this time?
No, our sponsor this section for this entire session was Greiner Sales.
Okay. No more Duracell or Ever-Ready batteries?
No more Duracell.
Right.
No more GPS, no more Garmin.
Yeah.
Totally Greiner.
Lowrance? Can we get Lowrance?
Loran? I don't know. Do they even have Loran anymore?
I think the brand is still going, but
I don't think they've got the.
I don't think it's.
We'll reach out to them, see if they want to sponsor.
We'll see about doing that on
future
another
podcast.
show. So thanks for coming in today.
I appreciate you guys having me, and look forward to coming back on again.
You can come back anytime.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, we can.
All right, good.
Did you give me?